Adjacent to this showpiece stood the Domus Augustana, Domitian's actual private residence. Bedrooms, personal baths, gardens, and courtyards that visitors never glimpsed. Domitian essentially maintained two palaces side by side, one for performance, one for living. Then came his private stadium. 160 meters of racing track, complete with seating for the imperial family and their inner circle. The emperor could watch chariot races, athletic competitions, and gladiatorial combat without leaving home. Mind you, the Circus Maximus sat literally down the hill, accommodating over 150,000 spectators. But apparently that wasn't exclusive enough. He required his own. While Domitian enjoyed races in his backyard, the genuine spectacle unfolded below at the Circus Maximus, the largest stadium the ancient world ever constructed. Over 150,000 Romans packed inside to witness chariot racing, the empire's most dangerous and obsessive sport. Drivers pushed their chariots to 75 kilometers per hour, colliding with such violence that Romans called these wrecks, quote, zero charioteers. Lashed reins around their waists, meaning a crash transformed into a death sentence, as horses dragged them across the track. Survivors, however, accumulated obscene wealth. One legendary driver earned enough during his career to feed Rome's entire population for 1 year. The fans matched this intensity. Romans divided themselves into 4 racing factions: blues, greens, reds, and whites. Their loyalty burned so fierce that riots erupted in the stands, sometimes slaughtering thousands. This transcended entertainment. It was collective madness. But Rome's most famous surviving venue was the Colosseum. Significantly smaller, seating merely 50,000. Yet it endured almost 2,000 years, and the violence inside made chariot racing look merciful. Because here violence wasn't accidental. It was the entire purpose. Across 300 years, approximately 400,000 people died in this arena. Gladiators, criminals, prisoners, slaves. Hundreds of thousands of animals slaughtered. Lions from Africa, bears from Germania, elephants from Egypt, hunted nearly to extinction just to satisfy Roman bloodlust. A typical day began with dawn executions, followed by midday animal hunts, culminating in afternoon gladiatorial combat. But the true innovation lurked beneath the arena floor, a 2-story labyrinth where slaves operated 28 elevators, sending beasts and fighters up through trapdoors. From the crowd's perspective, a lion materialized as if summoned by sorcery. Romans never witnessed the machinery, only the spectacle. During the 100-day opening games alone, 5,000 animals perished. This continued for centuries. That was Roman entertainment: blood, speed, and spectacle unprecedented in human history. When they weren't watching people die, Romans also practiced deep religious devotion, constructing magnificent temples throughout their city. Most temples honored a single deity, but the Pantheon broke this pattern. This temple celebrated all gods simultaneously, which is precisely what Pantheon means. Emperor Hadrian's method of hedging his bets with the divine. The Pantheon stands as the best preserved building from ancient Rome, and for excellent reason. It represents an engineering masterpiece. The concrete dome spans 43 meters across, with 0 internal supports, just one opening at the top called the oculus. Today, visitors can walk inside and stand beneath the same dome that Romans stood under 1,900 years ago. This design influenced architecture for 2 millennia, from Brunelleschi's dome in Florence to the United States Capitol. It became a church in 609 AD, which alone explains why it wasn't destroyed or stripped for materials like most Roman temples. Picture yourself standing in the ashes of a civilization that should have died. The year? 390 BC. Gallic invaders have just finished what they came to do. Every building reduced to charcoal and rubble. Every temple desecrated. The settlement that called itself Rome exists now only as a memory written in smoke against the Italian sky. Most cities would surrender to history at this point, become a footnote, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires. But something unprecedented happened instead. From those ashes emerged not just a city, but a phenomenon that would reshape 3 continents and establish blueprints for urban life we still follow 2,000 years later. Within a handful of centuries, that burnt village became the largest human settlement Earth had ever witnessed. 1 million souls packed into a metropolis where marble temples clawed toward the heavens, some climbing 10 stories high. Water flowed through stone arteries called aqueducts, defying gravity itself to quench an impossible thirst. Using archaeological evidence and historical documentation, we can now resurrect this vanished world through modern reconstruction technology. Walk its streets, stand in its forums, feel the weight of empire pressing down from every direction. 70 million people across 3 continents, bent to the will of administrators who worked from a single plaza. The Roman Forum served as the empire's nerve center, where the machinery of the most dominant political force in human history ground forward day after day. Dozens of temples and monuments crowded this space, but certain locations witnessed moments that altered the course of Western civilization. Consider the Curia. 600 senators crammed into this Senate House, their debates shaping laws that governed territories from Britain to Mesopotamia. The structure survives today as one of the Forum's best preserved remnants, a ghost still haunting the present. Step outside onto the plaza, and you'll find the rostra, that speaker's platform where Mark Antony delivered his devastating funeral oration after Julius Caesar's murder. We lack his precise words, but ancient accounts describe how he displayed Caesar's blood-soaked toga to the masses, then read aloud the dictator's will. Caesar had bequeathed money and gardens to every Roman citizen. Antony's performance proved so inflammatory that crowds spontaneously cremated Caesar's corpse right there in the Forum's heart. Romans later erected the Temple of Julius Caesar on that exact spot, transforming their murdered leader into the first Roman ever granted divine status. Yet perhaps the Forum's most sacred ground occupied far less space. A small circular temple dedicated to Vesta housed a flame that burned without interruption for over 1,000 years. Vestal virgins tended this eternal fire, and Romans believed its extinction would trigger the empire's collapse. These women committed 30 years of service and absolute celibacy. Breaking their vow meant burial alive. But their sacrifice purchased privileges no other Roman women possessed. They owned property, pardoned prisoners, wielded power that made them untouchable until Christianity dismantled their tradition in 394 AD. The Senate chamber, the sacred flame, the speaker's platform. We've barely scratched the surface of this single plaza that functioned as the empire's beating heart. But the emperors themselves inhabited an entirely different realm just above on Palatine Hill, where the entire hillside became one sprawling palace complex. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, built the Domus Augusti, modest by later standards, but this residence established the imperial tradition. Centuries later, Emperor Domitian rejected modesty entirely. He constructed the Domus Flavia, a ceremonial palace where state banquets fed hundreds of guests, where foreign kings received audiences in throne rooms, with ceilings reaching 30 meters high, where Rome's wealth dazzled anyone important enough to receive an invitation. The Pantheon impressed, but it wasn't Rome's most sacred building. That distinction belonged to the temple of Jupiter, king of gods, perched atop Capitoline Hill, one of Rome's 7 hills, rising directly above the Forum. Built in 509 BC, this temple honored Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the 3 paramount deities. Here triumphal processions concluded. After conquering new territory, generals climbed Capitoline Hill with prisoners, treasure, and victorious armies to offer sacrifices to Jupiter. For over 800 years, this temple functioned as the empire's spiritual heart, visible from across the city. But unlike the Pantheon, it didn't survive. Fires destroyed it repeatedly, and today almost nothing remains. Temples and gods provided spiritual power, but the empire truly ran on military might. Breaking centuries of Roman tradition that forbade troops inside city limits, emperors stationed the Praetorian Guard at the Castra Praetoria, transforming their bodyguards into their greatest threat. The Praetorian Guard was Rome's most prestigious military unit, around 10,000 soldiers at peak strength, who served as the emperor's personal protection, paid triple what regular troops received. Unlike other Roman legions stationed at the empire's borders, Praetorians lived right here in Rome at the Castra Praetoria, a massive military fortress built just outside the city in 23 AD. Highly unusual. Roman law traditionally forbade armies inside city limits, but emperors needed protection, and the Praetorian Guard provided it. Sometimes they also assassinated them. At least 13 emperors overthrew dynasties, and once auctioned the imperial throne to the highest bidder. The Castra Praetoria had thick fortified walls, not to defend against foreign enemies, but to house the most politically dangerous force in Rome. How could you identify a Praetorian in a crowd? The ceremonial armor tells everything. That red horsehair crest running side to side across the helmet, rather than front to back like regular soldiers, immediately marked him as elite guard. Silver scale armor and shoulder plates displayed superior craftsmanship. The red oval shield, decorated with scorpions, stars, and moons, bore the Praetorian symbol. The ceremonial spear and decorated bronze belt with ornate sword scabbard all identified him as part of the emperor's personal protection, though in reality their appearance varied dramatically. On campaign, standard legionary gear. Patrolling Rome, often just civilian dress. At state functions, this ornate version. Context determined everything. But while emperors worried about their bodyguards, ordinary Romans depended on something far more vital: the aqueducts. Consider the massive Aqua Claudia, one of Rome's 11 major aqueducts. It stretched 69 kilometers, from mountain springs in the Anio Valley straight to Rome. Massive stone arches rising 27 meters high, approximately as tall as a 9-story building, carrying water on top in a stone channel. Romans walking beneath these arches daily could glance up and witness one of the ancient world's greatest engineering achievements, casually delivering fresh water over their heads. The Aqua Claudia alone supplied enough to provide fresh water to hundreds of thousands of people every single day, all powered by nothing except gravity and precise engineering. Sections still stand today, nearly 2,000 years later. But Rome transcended its monuments. It was a living, breathing city of over 1 million people. Where did they actually live? You're a regular Roman, perhaps a shopkeeper or craftsman. You wake in an insula, a multi-story apartment building packed with families just like yours. About 90% of Romans inhabited these buildings. They stood 5 or 6 stories high, built cheaply with wood and brick, and families shared single rooms in cramped, noisy conditions. The higher you lived, the cheaper your rent, but also no running water, no kitchen, and if fire erupted, you climbed down narrow stairs in a burning building. Collapses happened so frequently that emperors eventually passed laws limiting building heights. Every morning you'd leave your cramped apartment and head somewhere like Trajan's Market to start your day. Built into a hillside, this massive complex contained over 150 shops and offices spread across multiple levels. Walk through the ground floor and you'd find small shops selling everything. Imported spices from the east, fresh fish from the coast, wine, olive oil, fabrics, pottery. Head upstairs and you'd discover larger warehouses and administrative offices where the empire's real business happened. Romans worked here, traded here, made deals here. The economy of an empire humming away in one massive building. After a long day, one place beckoned every Roman: the public baths. The baths of Trajan covered over 11 hectares and could accommodate thousands simultaneously. Bathing in Rome meant spending hours there. You'd exercise in the gymnasium, swim in pools, sweat in hot rooms, then shock your system with a cold plunge. Along the way, you'd meet friends, gossip about politics, conduct business deals, maybe grab a meal. Entry cost almost nothing, just a small coin. Everyone came. Slaves, merchants, even senators. All those aqueducts we saw earlier channeled water here, heating these massive complexes, filling the pools, giving ordinary Romans a quality of life that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. 1 million people, one city. Rome achieved it first. To make it work, they invented the modern city. They built insulae, 5- and 6-story apartment buildings housing 90% of the population, the world's first high-rises. They built the Aqua Claudia, 69 kilometers of stone arches carrying fresh water from mountains, 190,000 cubic meters daily. They built Trajan's Market, 150 shops stacked on multiple levels, ancient Rome's shopping mall. They built the Colosseum and Circus Maximus, stadiums holding over 200,000 people combined. They built the Baths of Trajan, 11 hectares where everyone from slaves to senators bathed. And they built it all to last. The Pantheon's concrete dome, still standing after 1,900 years, remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever constructed. Rome didn't just build a city. They answered a question nobody else could answer. How do you make 1 million people in one city work? Fast forward 2,000 years. New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. Apartment buildings, same concept as insulae. Sports stadiums, Colosseum design, just bigger. Public spaces, Roman forums and baths, just modernized. Concrete, still based on their chemistry. We've evolved the technology, but the foundation remains Rome. Rome solved it first. We've just been building on their blueprint ever since.